Chapter 9 Old Yeller. A boy, before he really grows up, is pretty much like a wild animal. He can get the wit scared clear out of him today, and by tomorrow have forgotten all about it. At least that's the way it was with me. I was plenty scared of the hydrophobia plague that Bern Sanderson told me about. I could hardly sleep that night. I kept picturing in my mind mad dogs and mad wolves reeling about with the blind staggers, drooling and slobbering and snapping and biting at everything in sight. Maybe biting Mama and little Arliss so that they got the sickness and went mad too. I lay in bed and shuddered and shivered and dreamed all sorts of nightmare happenings. Then the next day I got to rounding up and marking hogs and forgot all about the plague. Our hogs ran loose on the range in those days, the same as our cattle. We fenced them out of the fields, but never into a pasture. We had no pastures. We never fed them, unless maybe it was a little corn that we threw to them during the bad spell in the winter. The rest of the time they wrestled for themselves. They slept out and ate out. In the summertime they slept in the cool places around the water holes and sometimes in the water. And in the winter they could always tell at least a day ahead of time when a blizzard was on the way. Then they'd gang up and pack tons of leaves and dry grass and sticks into some dense thicket or cave. They'd pile all this into a huge bed and sleep on it until the cold spell blew over. They ranged all over the hills and down into the canyons. In season they fed on acorns, berries, wild plums, prickly pear, apples, grass, weed, and bulb plants which they rooted out of the ground. They especially liked the wild black persimmons that the Mexicans called chapotes. Sometimes, too, they'd eat a newborn calf, or if the mama couldn't keep them horned away, or if baby fawn that the doe had left hidden in the tall grass. Once in a real dry time, Papa and I saw an old sow standing belly deep in a pothole of water, catching and eating perch that were trapped in there and couldn't get away. Most of these meat eaters were old hogs, however. Starvation during some bad drought or extra cold winter had forced them to eat anything they could get a hold of. Papa said they generally started out by feeding on the carcass of some deer or cow that had died and then going from there to catching and killing live meat. He told a tale about how old one range hog had caught him just when he was a baby, and his folks barely got there in time to save him. It was that sort of thing, I guess, that always made Mama so afraid of wild hogs. The least thing that old biting choke would make her take cover. She didn't like it a bit when I started to catch and mark all the pigs that our sows had raised that year. She knew we had to do it, else we couldn't tell our hogs from those of the neighbors, but she didn't like the idea of my doing it alone. But I'm not working the hogs alone, Mama, I pointed out. I've got Old Yeller and Bern Sanderson. He's a real good hog dog. That doesn't mean a thing, Mama said. All hog dogs are good ones. A good one is the only kind that can work hogs and live, but the best dog in the world won't keep you from getting cut to pieces if you ever make a slip. Well, Mama was right. I'd worked with Papa long enough to know that any time you mess with a wild hog, you were asking for trouble. Let him alone, and he'll generally snort and run from you on sight, the same as a deer. But once you've cornered him, he's the most dangerous animal that ever lived in Texas. Catch a squealing pig out of the bunch and you've got a battle on your hands. All of them will turn on you at one time, and here they'll come, roaring and popping their teeth and cutting high and fast with gleaming white tushes that they keep whetted to the sharpness of knife points, and there's no bluff to them either. They mean business. They'll kill you if they can get to you. And if you're not fast-footed and don't keep a close watch, they'll get to you. They had to be that way to live in the country where wolves, bobcats, panther, and a bear were always after them, trying for a bait of fresh hog meat. And it was because of this that nearly all hog owners usually left 4 or 5 old barrows, or bar hogs as we called them, to run with each bunch of sows. The bar hogs weren't any more vicious than the boars, but they'd hang with the sows and help them protect the pigs and shoats, when generally the boars pulled off to range alone. I knew all about this range hogs and plenty more, yet I wasn't bothered about the job facing me. In fact, I sort of looked forward to it. Working wild hogs was always exciting and generally proved to be a lot of fun. I guess the main reason I felt this way was because Papa and I had figured out a quick and nearly foolproof way of doing it. We could catch most of the pigs we needed to mark and castrate without ever getting in reach of the old hogs. It took a good hog dog to pull off the trick, but the way Bert Sanderson talked about Old Yeller, I was willing to bet it was good. He caught on right away. We located our first bunch of hogs at a seep spring at the head of the shallow creek wash that led back toward Birdsong Creek. There were 7 sows, 2 long-tushed old bar hogs, and 14 small shotes. They'd come there to drink and to wallow around in the potholes of soft, cool mud. They caught wind of us about the same time I saw them. The old hogs threw up their snouts and said, "Woof," and then they all tore out for the hills, running through the rocks and brush almost as swiftly and silently as deer. "Had him, Yeller," I hollered. "Go get him, boy." But it was a waste of words. Old Yeller was done gone. He streaked down the slant, crossed the draw, and had the tail-end pig caught by the hind leg before the others knew he was after them. The pigs set up a loud squeal. Instantly, all the old hogs wheeled. They came at Old Yeller with their bristles up, roaring and popping their teeth. Yeller held on to his pig until I thought for a second they had him. Then he let go and whirled away, running toward me, but running slow. Slow enough that the old hogs kept chasing him, thinking every second they were going to catch him at the next. And when they finally saw they couldn't, the old hogs stopped and formed a tight circle. They faced outward around the ring, their rumps to the center where they all squealing pigs were gathered. That way, when they were ready to battle anything, they wanted to jump on them. That's the way they were used to fighting bear and panther off from their young, and that's the way they aimed to fight us off too. But we were too smart, Old Yeller and I. We knew better than to try to break into that tight ring of threatening tushes. Anyhow, we didn't need to. All we needed was just to move the hogs along to where we wanted them. Old Yeller already knew how to do this. Back he went, right up to their faces, where he pestered them with yelling bays and false rushes till they couldn't stand it. With an angry roar, one of the barrows broke the ring to charge him, and instantly all the others charged too. They were right on Old Yeller again. They were just about to get to him, just let him get a few inches closer, and one of them would slam a 4-inch tush into the soft belly. The thing was, Old Yeller would never let them get the last few inches on him. They cut and slashed at him from behind and both sides, yet he never was quite there. He was always just a little bit beyond their reach, yet still so close that they couldn't help thinking that the next try was sure to get them. It was a blood-chilling game Old Yeller played with the hogs, but that you could see he enjoyed by the way he went at it. Give him time, and he'd take that bunch of angry hogs clear down out of the hills and into the pens at home if that's where I wanted them. Never driving them, just leading them along. But that's where Papa and I had other hog hunters outfigured. We almost never took our hogs to the pens to work them anymore. That took too much time. Also, after we got them penned, there was still the dangerous job of catching the pigs away from the old ones. I hollered at Old Yeller. "Bring 'em on, Old Yeller," I said. And then I turned and headed for a big gnarled live oak tree that stood in a clear patch of ground down the draw piece. I picked out that tree because it had a huge branch that stuck to one side. I went and looked at that branch and saw that it was just right. It was low, yet far above the ground to be out of reach of the highest cutting hog. I climbed up the tree and squatted on the branch. I unwound my rope from where I'd packed it coiled around my waist and shook out a loop. And then I hollered for Old Yeller to bring the hogs to me. He did what I told him. He brought the fighting hogs to the tree and rallied them a ring around it. And then he stood back, holding them there while he cocked his head sideways at me, wanting to know what came next. I soon showed him. I waited till one of my pigs came trotting up under my limb. I dropped my loop around him and gave him a quick yank and lifted him up, squealing and kicking up out of the shuffling and roaring mass of hogs below. I clamped him between my knees and pulled out my knife and went to work on him. First, I folded his right ear and sliced out a 3-corner gap at the top side, a mark that we call an overbite. Then, from under the underside of his left ear, I slashed off a long strip that ran clear to the point. That's what we called an underslope. that had him marked for me. Our mark was overbite on the right and underslope on the left. Other settlers had other marks, like crop the right and underbite the left, or two underbites in the right ear, or an overslope in the left and an overbite in the right. Everybody knew the hog mark of everybody else, and we all respected them. We never butchered or sold a hog that didn't belong to us, or marked a pig following a sow that didn't wear out a mark. Cutting marks in a pig's ear is bloody work, and the scared pigs kick and squeal like he's dying. But he's not really hurt. What hurts him is the castration. And I never did like that part of the job, but it had to be done, and still does if you want to eat hog meat. Let a boar hog get grown without cutting this part, and the meat would be too tough. The squealing of a pig and the scent of the blood made the hogs beneath me go nearly wild with anger. You never heard such a roar, teeth popping, and they kept circling the tree and rearing up on the trunk trying to get at me. The noise they made and the hate and anger that showed in their eyes was enough to chill your bone. Only I was used to the feeling and didn't let it bother me. That is, not much. Sometimes I'd let my mind slip for a minute and get to thinking how much they'd slash me to pieces if I happened to fall out of the tree, and I'd feel a sort of cold shudder run all through me. But Papa had told me right from the start that fear was a right and natural feeling for anybody and nothing to be ashamed of. It's a thing of your mind, he said, and you can train your mind to handle it just like you train your arm to throw a rock. Put that away. It made sense to be afraid, so I hadn't bothered about it. I put in all my time to train my mind not to let fear stampede me. Sometimes it did yet, of course, but not when I was working with hogs. I'd had enough experience at working with hogs that I could generally look down and laugh at them. I finished with the first pig and dropped it to the ground, and then one after another I roped the others, dragging them into the tree and worked them over. A couple of times the old hogs on the ground got so mad that they broke ranks and charged at Old Yeller. But right from the start, Old Yeller had caught on to what I wanted, and every time they chased him away from the tree, he'd just run off a little away and circle back, and then stand off far enough away that they rally around my tree again. In less than an hour, I was done with the job, and the only trouble we had was getting the hogs to leave the tree after I was finished. And after going to so much trouble to hold the hogs under the tree, Old Yeller had a hard time understanding that I finally wanted them out of the way. And even after I got him to leave, the hogs were so mad and so suspicious that I had to squat there in the tree for nearly an hour longer before they finally drifted away into the brush, making it safe for me to come down.